Thank you for being here. So this session is called Food Unmasked, Why Eating Feels Harder Than It Should Be. Now, if you've not been to one of these sessions before, we run them about once a month and we bring in experts to talk about all different important topics that are relatable to our neurodivergent community. And tonight I'm very excited because we've got two incredible speakers here who have a wealth of information about food, about eating challenges. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do. But we've got Lisa Smith and Joanne Lee here. So Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yes, certainly. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. As Emmy said, I'm Lisa Smith. I'm a functional nutritionist, and a functional nutritionist is really interested on how the body is working, why it's doing what you don't want it to do, why it isn't doing what you do want it to do. So we'll look at how it actually functions. I'm also the lead tutor for the nutrition on the National Centre for Eating Disorders. And when you say eating disorders, most people think anorexia, just don't. That's about 5% of them. It's basically the binge eating, the overeating, the compulsive eating that I work with. And I'm the co-founder of a company called Ned Training. When we train health professionals, nutrition professionals, therapists, counsellors, of the special considerations to take into account when you're working with neurodivergent individuals, especially if there is any disordered eating. And over to you, Jo.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here with you all tonight. I'm Jo, as Emmy has kindly introduced me. I'm a nutritional therapist and also a metabolic balance practitioner. So I look at very similar things to Lisa. And I don't want to say much more, but I'm just really looking forward to chatting with you tonight.
Thank you both so much. So just to say to everyone watching right now, you will be able to put comments in the chat. So what we will do, I think, to manage that in the best way possible is if the chat is related to something that we're speaking about in the moment, I'll throw directly to that and we'll deal with it there and then. If you've got a comment about something that hasn't quite come up yet, I'll maybe deal with that later on in the chat, because I do know that Lisa and Jo have got an awful lot to say, but just trust me, we will get to any questions that you might have. For now, I've got some talking points that we're going to get through, but as I say, please feel free to leap in if there's anything that people want to know. So just to start off, and whoever wants to answer this question you can answer it between you, we'll see. So Lisa and Jo, from your experience, how does ADHD change someone's relationship with food compared to sort of neurotypical eating patterns?
Do you want me to take that, Jo?
Yeah, you start and then I can always chip in.
Yeah. I think there's about 5 or 6 key things that we need to take into account, Emmy. The first one is interoception. So interoception is basically your body letting your brain know how it's feeling so the brain can let you know. And so think of things like hunger and thirst. You know, what you want to know is how, when you're hungry, you know to eat. But some people have poor interoception, and it's especially common with ADHD. And I always say, because there's so much going on up there, there's so many tabs open, that the subtle message that goes, I'm a bit peckish now, doesn't get through. So neither does the subtle message that says, I've eaten enough now. They don't get through until you're absolutely starving or you're absolutely full. So that can have a big impact, because it can then lead or couple with things like time blindness and time perception. You know, you sit down to do something, that focus is a bit all or nothing. If you get that hyper focus, hours can go, excuse me, and you haven't eaten. I think then we've got the whole thing about ADHD is dopamine regulation. You know, there's ADHD, there's lower dopamine levels, which makes eating can be a little bit more impulsive. It can be that sudden, I'm hungry, I need to eat. And if the body is looking for dopamine, it's going to look for it in sugar, in salt, in caffeine, in carbs. So not necessarily the foods that are actually going to be beneficial in the longer term. We've got issues potentially with sensory processing. A lot of my clients, crunchy foods, great. Slimy foods, forget it. So when you see on Instagram and it's, oh, eat your salmon, and your porridge for breakfast and mushrooms and eggs, just not going in on that. So we've got to take that into account. Also, you're looking at the executive functioning, just thinking about the time it takes to plan food, go and get the food from the shops, the preparation of the food. If there's a lot going on, that executive functioning can just be a little bit overwhelming, which then ties into the emotional regulation. It's really, at the end of the day, sometimes that overwhelm can be such that there's no room, there's no capacity to actually think, what should I be eating? It is, let me just grab the easiest thing. I don't know if you want to add anything there, Jo.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sometimes as well with the interoception, even when that signal is finally received, you can sometimes still just push through because you're in hyper focus. So you'll just even ignore that signal. So that's another issue too. But I think you've covered a lot of it, and we can talk about tips later on for dealing with some of those, especially with the food prep. I've got a lot to say about that, but we can save that for a bit later.
Amazing. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Any sort of actionable tips you can give people to take away today are going to be absolutely brilliant. So next thing I wanted to touch on is, would you say there are any kind of myths around ADHD and eating that you want to clear up from the start?
Yeah.
Yeah, you start.
Okay. Certainly, I think there is the myth that you just need to put a bit more effort in, be a bit more disciplined, just come on, try a bit harder type thing, without recognizing these challenges that we just mentioned. And that can be quite a big one, because that starts adding the shame, the blame, and the judgments.
Yeah,
I think.
Sorry, go on, Lisa.
And I think a lot of the time we need to be more curious than we do be judgmental on there. And
I was thinking of picky eating too. It's another one, isn't it? That label, which, it's not that you're being fussy, is that you have definite preferences. And I think how we've been working recently together is just really getting clients to honor those preferences. You can't force yourself to eat things and textures that you don't like. And, sometimes you can end up having quite a limited range of foods, but you're not being picky, you're not being fussy. It's the preferences, it's the things you like.
Yeah, then I think there's very much the, it's a lack of willpower. Just try a bit harder, but that emotional side comes in as well. That you get that ADHD individuals can be so emotional. And it isn't emotional. It is just that, that the way that the body responds. Sometimes what to a neurotypical person might not be something that's overwhelming. To an ADHD person, it can be. And I always say to somebody, it's not just a matter of, I don't like something. It's the intensity of that dislike. That's why I think there's a lot of shoulds, musts, shoulds, that in the diet sort of industry. And I was using the diet as in food, in the food industry. But I think sometimes we just need to throw them out of the window and stop putting the blame. You should eat. It's irresponsible if you don't eat. It just adds to that overwhelm that at the end of the day, people just haven't got that capacity to actually look and go out and make this fantastic meal as Instagram says that we should be having. And I think social media is a real big issue, because it's giving unrealistic expectations without taking into account the individuality of the person.
Yeah, and likewise with the shame, it's like if you're suddenly eating a lot, binging or emotionally eating it, the myth is that you're out of control. Like but you've got to be sort of flexible, but it's often due to low dopamine. You're then craving things. It's not that you're out of control emotionally necessarily. And sometimes it's in response because you've missed a meal, because you've been hyper focused, or your interoception's not enabled you to feel that hunger earlier. So then you're binging and craving later on.
Absolutely. I mean, just to the point on social media, I mean, absolutely, obviously, we are a brand that has social media, of course. And one of the things we really try and put across to people is that we would rather you ate something than nothing. It's not about guilt. And we try and sort of offer very simple ways for people to do that, because we know someone's not going to get in and make a 3-course dinner when they get home. It's completely unrealistic. But you're right, there is a pressure on socials to eat in a certain way, and it's just not viable for people.
Right. And I think we get these food rules as well, you know, sort of breakfast must be within an hour of waking up, and I always say mint sauce must go with lamb. Well, who says it must? You know, if you want to have it with chicken, you have it with chicken. I've got clients, and some of their meals I wouldn't have. You know, banana and sardines on toast would not be my first choice. But if you like it and you enjoy it, what's the problem with everybody else? You know, it's that we've got a lot of food rules and food police, and I think we need to let go of them sometimes. You know, it can be very much that you see this more sort of, you've got to sit at the table and eat. You know, you say, well, sometimes having a distraction can take away maybe from that sensory overwhelm of the food, the smell of the food, the taste of the food. And if the distraction, it can be good and it can be bad. It can be bad if you're distracted and you're just mindlessly eating. But if, you know, it's an effort to eat, having that distraction can make it a little bit easier on there. But I think we have a lot of sort of things that, you know, as I say, you must do this, you must do that. Well, actually, no. It's about being, Joe always says, you know, it's not about being perfect. It's about being fed and functional.
Yeah. And also just creating those meals that we've named minimum viable meals. So you can have several of them for, you know, if you think of the meals that you have in a day, they don't have to be called breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They're just meals. Think of them as meals. So you can eat whatever you want at any of those meals. And if you can create at some point, start to think about the things you really enjoy that you can assemble really, really quickly with no effort, that you can ensure that you have in your cupboard. So it might be, can we mention brands of products, or the pouches like Merchant Gourmet? I love them. You can get all the different pouches of lentils. They have beans, sort of bolognese. They have chickpeas, rice, and they're store cupboard. So you don't need to load up your fridge with them, but you can just open them. Most of those you can eat cold if you don't want to even heat them, or you can heat them. You could add some cheese on top, or a piece of cooked rotisserie chicken. You could have a bag of salad. It doesn't have to be any cooking. It can just be literally assembly. And if you have in your written down, I think, or on your phone, whatever works for you, or even pictures of these really easy meals that you can just assemble, and you try and have the ingredients in your cupboard, even if you need someone to help you get that organized, they're there, and you can look at your pictures or your list and say, right, those 3 things make a meal. It could be pre-cut veggies, yogurt, granola, fruit. You can just eat something. And yes, it does not have to be perfect. It doesn't matter if it comes out of the microwave, but if you eat, that's, you're winning.
Amazing.
I think if I can just jump in there as well with hunger, Amy, because I think we sometimes think of hunger in different ways, but, you know, I always say there's 3 hungers. There's head hunger, there's stomach hunger, and there's dopamine hunger. And it's the dopamine hunger that we've got to satisfy, because somebody might eat, but if they don't eat the foods that is going to give the body dopamine, then you're still going to be craving it. And this is one of the big things with diets, because when you go on a diet, you naturally take away all the things that are going to give you dopamine: salt, sugar, chocolate, caffeine, high fat carb foods. This is why it doesn't work. We have this ADHD 3-day diet. You know, day one, well, day -1, you eat everything that you're not going to eat on your diet, so you've cleaned it out the house. Day 1, you start, this is great, this is what I'm doing. You've taken everything out to give you that dopamine hit. Day 2, the cravings start. So I'm going to keep with this, and you start feeling lousy. If the cravings get louder, day 3, it's like the brain go, oh, look at that bar of chocolate. Oh, just try that. And that's the diet gone. Because you've taken away all of the things that were supporting the dopamine production, which is so essential with ADHD. And one of the things that Joe and I do is let's get the foods in that can support that. If you take something away, you're going to leave a void. We have to get the things in order that you can start working to support the dopamine. Yes, we've got the supplements that we can use, but food, we need to sort of try and bring that in so it becomes a factor. So it's looking at, okay, what does the body need to make dopamine, and where can we get it? And that's sort of Joe's expertise area.
Yeah, well, I would just say for people, if you're feeling really overwhelmed, if you do focus on protein, getting some protein in, because you need protein to make your neurotransmitters like dopamine. So, I mean, protein has become, it's everywhere, isn't it? Everything is being labeled with high protein, this, that. You don't have to buy anything fancy. You can use protein powders if you need to, but it is really great to get it in a food form. But you don't even have to cook it. If you do like fish, like the sardines and bananas, tin sardines, they're brilliant. I used to famously take a tin with me to college whenever I was studying, because if I didn't like what was there, I knew I had food. And there's lots of companies that make really, you have tuna, mackerel fillets, they're in glass jars or tins, and you just open them, pop them on a ready-made salad, and you're getting your protein, you're getting your fiber, your nutrients, and great sources of omega-3 as well, which is brilliant.
And so, I think sorry, Joe, I was going to say, if people are using protein powders, it's not to rely on them as they are as a sort of drink, but maybe get an unflavored one and use it to just protein boost some of the things that you are eating. So you can just have some soup. If you make the unflavored protein powder into, mix it with water into a paste and just stir it into the soup. So you're not changing a massive change, but you're not just drinking and gulping down the protein, because some of them can be really quite harsh on digestion. And a lot of ADHD of my clients already have digestive issues. So the last thing we want to do is whack a protein powder in. And again, there's a lot out there that there are good ones and there are bad ones, shall we say.
Yeah, and with that, it's really simple, like Lisa said, to make it into a paste. So if you have a mug, you put your scoop of protein powder in there, a little bit of cold water with a fork, or if you've got a very small whisk it till it's smooth. And then you can just pour it in things like veggie stews, soups, ready-made soups that you're buying, but you like them, but they're lower in protein and you want to get that higher. And it's brilliant. You can add it to beef stews, chicken stews, soups, anything. So it's a really, really good way of getting it in, but it needs to be plain. You wouldn't want to be doing that with strawberry vanilla or chocolate. Well, maybe, I don't know.
I think maybe. I always think of them as being sweet, and this is revolutionary actually, because I just think banana flavor, which obviously not ideal with soup.
You can also put them into, if people do any baking, or I think you can put them into things that you're baking as well. They can be quite versatile and be a real thing, especially if you've got, somebody has missed a meal out of the day, and then you've got to suddenly try and get this protein in. It can be really difficult. And if you have cereal, you could just, if you have some, you don't have to have the full serving size. It's about increasing where you are. So just mixing some, if in the milk, if it's in the porridge, on the cereal, if it's that. And there's some great, now you can get say Jason's do a protein seeded sourdough. It's got 10 grams of protein in each slice. So making these small choices can actually help to boost the protein. And without protein, if you were making bread, protein's like the flour. Yeah, but we also need the bit of salt and the yeast for that recipe to work. And that's when we need the other nutrients. We need the zinc, we need the iron, we need the magnesium and the B6, in order that your body has the ingredients to make the recipe for dopamine. Because a brain that is constantly seeking dopamine is going to find anything that gives it a dopamine hit so much more pleasurable. So this is when we look at the chocolate, the sugar, etc. Now, dopamine, when it's presented, what it's actually asking the brain is two questions. Do I like this? And do I want to do it again? It's reward and motivation. So if you get a great big kick out of a bar of chocolate, do I like this? Yep, I do. Do I want to do it again? Yep, I do. But it's that up and down. What we want is to bring more balance in.
This feels like a really good moment because we've had a couple of questions come in. And one of them is particularly relevant to what we're talking about right now. So we've had a question, how can I lose weight in a way that means I still get my dopamine so it's maintainable? And I know we've had another question, but I'll come to that in a moment.
Yeah, well, this is funny. Joe and I are just in the middle of a 6-week course that we're doing, which is all about ADHD and weight management. And we look at sort of everything that's in there. And I think one of the things to do is it's almost, you've got to forget about the calories. You've got to forget about the diet, the restriction, that all of those things, and concentrate on getting those nutrients in, because it's the dopamine that's why diets, I say that's why they don't work, especially with the ADHD individual, because you take away the dopamine. It's about getting the foods in that make the dopamine, that stop the cravings, that bring in more balance, that allow that additional executive functioning and all of those things that keep things from bouncing around at that 100% or nothing. And the first thing that we say to do is stop dieting. That's the first thing. Now let's look at what you are eating. Now, how can we boost it so we're not radically changing it? Like we've said, you're just adding things, you're tweaking things to get the dopamine in, because that's the key thing. We need to get that dopamine balance before the diet will work. And then it's not about restriction, because if you restrict, you're just going to starve. The body will naturally work against that when food becomes readily available again, it will just store it. You have to think in evolutionary terms on here. This is why the diet industry is putting you up to fail by putting you on these restrictive programs, because at the end of the day, your body is going to rebel against that as soon as food becomes available, and you'll put the weight on, which is what we see with yo-yo dieting. But especially with ADHD, you have to deal with that dopamine. And then it means that the brain isn't constantly seeking salt and sugar and crisps and chocolate and Diet Coke is the company. People say, oh, but Diet Coke, there's no sugar in that. No, there isn't, but there is more caffeine, and caffeine is just another thing that's going to spike your dopamine, then drop you. Do you want to add anything there, Joe?
I just think it goes back to what we said before as well about just adding things and before you take things away, because there are some things we all eat, and it's not that we can't ever have them, but if we're relying on them for our energy instead of having foods that are actually giving us all the raw materials, like Lisa said, then we're not doing our bodies a service. But you can't just take them out, because you will have this hole and then you will give up after a couple of days because you'll feel so fed up. So I sometimes suggest to my clients, choose one meal where you think, okay, I'm going to add something or change, whether it's bread. I mean, I've even seen in the supermarket the other day, there's a milk with a much higher, if you're eating dairy, there's a milk, I think it's called Super Nutrio, and it has like a much higher level of protein. It's nothing, it's just been filtered, so there's extra calcium and there's more protein. So that's like an easy add-on as well. And things like, sorry, Lisa.
The Eat Lean cheese.
Yeah, the Eat Lean cheese. I mean, that's another one which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And if you like pasta, there are lots of high protein pastas that you could opt for. And then you could consider, right, maybe make the swap first, even if you're to get used to it. There's a slightly different texture to some of them. You have to experiment and find one you like, but you could have half the regular pasta and half of the higher protein one, and then gradually fade it out. And then you could then move forward and have more vegetables. So you can spiralize courgettes, carrots. You don't have to have a fancy gadget. You could just have a vegetable peeler and make ribbons, or use frozen veg and have that with less of the pasta, but you're still getting the pasta. I mean, I love pasta and I don't eat gluten, so I occasionally get gluten-free pasta. I try and find one that I really like, and I really enjoy it. And I think if you're not depriving yourself, then you know that what you do consistently is going to be more than enough. And that's it. I think it's all good enough. And that's what you want to do, but with the nutrients so that your body can do its magic. Think of it like a factory. If you don't have the raw materials going in, you can't make things you need. And it's really, it sort of sounds simple, and it isn't sometimes when you're feeling stress. But I think having those meals that you can assemble quickly help, because they can be easy to do, but nutritious and satisfying, which is the key.
Brilliant, thank you. We've had another question from one of our viewers on YouTube, I'm sure is dying to know if there's an answer to this. So their question is, do sensory sensitivities tend to change over time?
They can change, yes. They're always going to be there to some extent, but they will change dependent on how stressed and overwhelmed you are with that. And that will also change with what your dopamine levels, how balanced those are. Yes, because they also, the gut, a lot of interoceptive nerves in the gut. So if you've got gut issues, the classic, your IBS, etc., that can heighten them. But anxiety and stress can really have an impact on your interoception, because it's almost, the more stressed the brain gets, the more it goes into its safe default mode. So, it doesn't want anything to challenge it, because we're trying to deal with all of this. I always say that your brain and nervous system can't see or hear. They have to be told what's happening. And if that information is constantly anxious and stressed without any positive feedback coming in, then that's what the body will be. And you get stuck in that cycle. And then if we're bouncing because of that, we're more anxious, we're more stressed, we're more overwhelmed. Decision making, we lose some executive functioning on decision making. It becomes to that grab what you can. And of course, you're going to grab what your sensory preferences are. And so, I'll say a lot of my clients, it's crisps, it's nuts, it's crunchy, because it helps to soothe in some way. It's okay. Let's find now some crisp and crunchy foods that are actually got some nutrition in there. So we've got to honor those sensory preferences. It's no point saying, oh, just try it. We need to work on calming the body. A lot of the time, both Joe and I are working with stressed bodies that are just trying to get through the day. And what we've got to do is try and get the body a little bit less stressed, because then the interoception widens a little bit and you can challenge things. But unfortunately, stress and anxiety are big factors in that.
We've got a comment here from Kate saying she feels like hers changed after the menopause, which really sort of fits in with everything.
Let me just very quickly jump in with that one. Estrogen. So think first of all of your menstrual cycle. Estrogen fluctuates. We know the week before your period, you lose estrogen. Estrogen stimulates dopamine and serotonin in the body. So that week before, you lose dopamine and serotonin. So there's all your ADHD symptoms magnified. But serotonin, low levels associated with low mood, high anxiety, binge eating, bigger appetites. Now let's think about the perimenopause. Oh, those hormones are going everywhere. And that's sometimes when the wheel comes off, that people have been able to cope up until that, because it might be 3 weeks I've been okay, 1 week, God, I'll deal with that. You come to the perimenopause, things bounce everywhere. And the menopause, you don't have estrogen. So sometimes HRT can be beneficial for an ADHD postmenopausal lady, because it is giving some support for both dopamine and serotonin. So quite often at menopause, people are given antidepressants. And unfortunately, one of the side effects of antidepressants can be a bigger appetite. So we go down that route. But, if we work with providing the body with those raw ingredients to help to produce its own on that, and you can support with foods for the estrogen as well. I mean, but it does, again, that's where sometimes the sensory comes in, because you'd want to be looking at things like the fermented soy products, the tofu, the tempeh. And not everyone likes those because it's that slimy texture. But I mean, Jo, you make tofu blend it with anything to make a sauce, don't you?
Yeah, if you use the silken tofu, Clear Spring do a nice organic one in little UHT containers. And I'm just actually writing up some recipes. I was this afternoon, but I can't remember any of them at the moment. But and some of them can be cold, so that you can literally just whiz it up with herbs, and you can even add tamari or soy, and then you just put your hot food if you want on top, and that will just be enough warmth. Some you can warm, but you can make them quite creamy. You can use it to make a pasta sauce. So you could sprinkle in some nutritional yeast, which gives it a cheesy flavor, or you could use the Eat Lean cheese. And yeah, you can do a lot with a pack of silken tofu. And if you even just Google, you'll come up with loads of suggestions. I was going to say something for the crispy, nutty flavor is dry frying. So just get a small frying pan with pumpkin seeds, no oil. You throw them in on a sort of low to medium heat and just keep them stirring. And they'll sort of you'll get the thing that'll start to pop and split. Just tip them onto a kitchen towel, and you've got they go nuttier and sort of puffy, a bit like sort of popcorn. You can, when they're nearly at that stage, put a little sprinkle of soy or tamari to make like a spicier, sort of more savory. But you could toast those and put them on top of your porridge. You could have them on salads, over veggies, or just eat them. They're quite nice to have in your bag in a little container.
Yeah,
So have a little nibble on.
That when you look at those, both, you know, the tofu, the tempeh, the pumpkin seeds, not only are they helping with the hormones, the protein. So you're killing two birds with one stone there. And this is what we say, it's like almost eat clever. And, you know, sometimes you try and do everything without seeing how it connects. So somebody might go, I've got to do this for my hormones, I've got to do this for my protein, I've got to do this. Well, actually, just do this one thing, and that will help. So, yeah, we've got to make things simple so people can actually make it. We like the little wins instead of the fails. So aim for little wins.
And even the fails, it's information for you. So if you've tried something and you didn't like it, it's information. It's not a failure as in disaster, because it's a fail is still a win because you're learning something about yourself. Can we talk about porridge though, just quickly? Because if you do like porridge, Lisa is responsible for this tip, which I tell everybody about. Because you could use that higher protein milk, but you could also have a little mug again with an egg, which you stir up with a fork. And when your porridge is almost cooked, you tip that whisked egg into the porridge and just keep stirring, 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 stirring. Now, I say it doesn't really change the taste at all. I think it does a tiny bit, maybe. You might see a slightly golden color, but you've got your protein and your fats, and you've got hidden egg. And then you could add a big dollop of high protein yogurt, Greek yogurt, or Biotiful, 30 grams of protein yogurt, or they do a 25-gram with cherry flavor. Big spoonful of that on top, some pumpkin seeds, your fruit. You've got bowl food, which if you like it, it's warming, it's satisfying. It's going to help stabilize your blood sugar. It's just like egg in yogurt sounds horrific, but try it. If you don't like it, throw it in the bin.
I think I need to stress here, don't think scrambled egg and porridge. Think yeah? It's more of it just sort of slightly changes the colour, makes it that creamier thing, but please don't think scrambled egg. It doesn't do that at all.
You just got to keep it moving. If you've got to whisk it really well before you add it, and you've got to keep it moving, moving, moving. And if you don't want to do it, if you've got a friend or family member that can do it for you, because it might be good to do a taste test to see if you could actually detect which one has it in or not. And again,
yeah, the other thing that if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to make enough for at least 2 or 3 days and keep it in the fridge, then just heat it up. Then I haven't got to do it every morning. You can just go in and use the microwave, heat up your breakfast. And you'll get those people that, using the microwave. You know what? We're not, like we said, we're not after perfects. We're after fed. and functional and getting the body to work properly.
But you can heat it. You can heat it in a little saucepan too if you don't want to use a microwave. My microwave is broken, so I can't use a microwave. But you might need to add just a little bit of liquid to it if you had it in the fridge, just to loosen it.
And Margot's just added that ground almond is good in porridge. It makes it fluffy, apparently.
Lovely.
And we've got. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say I'm going to try that one.
Yeah, sounds lovely.
Thank you for the tip.
Thank you, Margot. And we've got a couple of more questions that have come in. So Claire, hello Claire, has asked, what are the best resources to understand what I am swapping in and out is actually going to be better for me?
That sounds like hard work in a way, to be checking. I think getting familiar with labels is quite important, because often we find that what's on the label at the front is what's trying to persuade you to buy something. So with the gluten-free stuff, a lot of things are labeled gluten-free that are naturally gluten-free. They don't need that label, but it's like jumping on the bandwagon. High protein. Okay, so what does that actually mean? Turn it over. Look at the back. I mean, once you've done this a few times, you won't have to keep doing it, but look at the products you're buying and see what it actually says on the back, because that's where the real information lies. So sometimes you'll see that they'll give the amounts of the nutrition amounts in for 100 grams, but you're not eating 100 grams, or you're eating a lot more than 100 grams. So look at that with a view to, what am I actually eating? What is my portion size? Because it might be very different to what they're saying on the front. Like even with that high protein milk I mentioned, on the front it says 70 grams of protein, but that is for the whole liter of milk. So you've got to look at the back. And then I would get familiar with different things, like we said earlier about the small swaps, like the higher protein yogurts. I wouldn't go low fat yogurt. I would always go, I never know how you say it, that one that's spelt Farge. I don't know how you say it.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, probably that. You've probably got it right. There's always these weird things, how they pronounce them. But anyway, that yogurt, if you had the 5% one, I think the protein content of that is good. I don't know offhand. Cottage cheese, again, I used to hate cottage cheese, but I found some delicious ones, and some are really creamy. There's one called Alter Ego, which is really lovely, but you can hide it. You could, instead of your banana, or with your banana, and your sardines, you could mash up some cottage cheese, and with tinned pink salmon, you get a fantastic sort of spread if you like fish. But you can add loads of soft herbs in there. Anything. It doesn't, like Lisa said earlier, you could put mint sauce in it. We don't mind what it is if you like the flavor. And if you have your favorite herb blends, that's another way of just changing the taste, so you hit that novelty. But with chicken breast, but with a lemon chicken spice blend, or fajita blend, or Italian seasoning, you've got 3 different tastes very quickly. So Lisa might have some other suggestions, but I would look at just making little switches, like higher protein bread, higher protein pasta, adding that color in.
And I think, look at the food itself. Is it food? Has it been grown? Was it, you get a lot of they call them ultra processed foods, but they're actually industry produced edible substances, a lot of them, and if we can get those out, they're just filling that stomach hunger. That's all that they're doing. Maybe a bit of comfort eating that you might get. They're doing nothing for that dopamine hunger. So it's try to get some food that looks like food. It's been grown, or it's eaten something that's grown, or it's swam, or it's fallen off a tree. Something in there that is actual food. And I know that can be quite challenging, but it's like going back to this meals. It doesn't have to be a meal. I have picnic food when I'm on my own, and that might be a bit of whatever I fancy in the fridge with some crackers, and it can be the most random things on the plate. I just fancy them. I find a bit of that and a bit of that, and I'll have picnic food, but it's food, as opposed to things that I am absolutely fine with veganism and vegetarianism until we start looking at the fake meats, because they're not really food. They are the industry produced edible substances. Very little. Any nutrition in there has been synthetically added. That's the sort of thing that we don't want the reliance on, really. At the end of the day, they're better than nothing. So depends where we're starting from. Remember, we're not seeking perfection. They're better than, I don't know, Jo, are they better than nothing, those? I think we've got a bit
Well,
of a, just have
I
a bit
think,
of
yeah, it's you sometimes when you turn the packs over, you look at a beef burger. Just usually it's 100% beef, maybe some spice, and then you look at the ingredient list for the I can't think of a fake, but the fake burger, and it's long, and there's lots of stuff in there that's maybe not going to be good for your gut as well. So I think you can eat a beautiful whole food vegan vegetarian diet, but it does take a bit of effort. I think it takes more effort to eat well and to make sure you're getting adequate protein, because you've got to eat a lot more quantity to hit your protein. And usually the whole food protein sources vegan have a lot more carbs with them. So you're having to eat, and to hit the protein, you probably won't even want to eat that much. So I've been looking at vegan products and looking at the protein amounts for this talk that we're doing, and I'm starting to go into that this Sunday, because you actually have to eat they're saying a serving is 2, but even if you ate, say, like 8 of them, you're only getting about 7 grams of protein. It's not enough. So okay if you have them, but you've got to add other protein as well, and you're probably going to be full because you've just eaten 7 golf ball size falafels or something. But I mean, I love them. They're tasty, but I would be probably hungry later or seeking, a dopamine hit, and I'd want it now because my meal has been deficient. It's not to say that it's terrible. Some of them have got quite nice ingredients, but you've got to be conscious of what is the serving size, how much protein am I getting? And it's not about pushing protein like 50 grams of protein per meal, no, but adequate protein to give you the raw materials you need.
We've got a question here from Katie. And just by the way, as a reminder to anyone who's watching, listening, please feel free to answer more questions. We've got about a quarter of an hour of the session left. So I want to make sure if anyone does have any questions for our experts that you ask them, because you don't want to regret it. So Katie has said, do you have any tips or tricks to help soothe and avoid a dopamine hunger fueled sugar binge in the moment?
Well, the first thing is to get those things in with the dopamine. Now, that sometimes might need supplementation, because we need to get those raw ingredients in. We need to get them in quickly. And if we can do that via supplements, I don't know if I can mention Get Dopa here, but I will do, because I recommend it a lot. Because it's got the raw ingredients in, it's got the proteins that are needed to make it. So you get that in and you put that in the morning. The body's got something to work with. Now, if we look at those sugar cravings or dopamine cravings that you get are because your levels are low. So it's a matter of, if you get that protein in the morning with your porridge, with your eggs, with your Jason's sourdough bread, with your mashed banana or whatever, if you get that, in protein and fiber are the two things that stop you, they help to keep the food that you've eaten in the digestive tract longer, which means your blood sugar levels stay more stable. If we're looking at stopping the dip, we have to start, quite often a lot of binge eating's at the end of the day, or say from about 4 o'clock, because you go, I've finished work now. Suddenly your tabs shut down and the brain realizes that you're hungry. And of course we want that dopamine hit now. And that's when it's the chocolate, the sweets, the crisps, etc. And it's then a matter of having something that's going to satisfy that, but again is giving you some nutrition with it. So, if crisps are your thing, then there are some crisps now that are made of peas and beans. They're still crisps, they'll still give you the crunch, they've still got that bit of salt, but they're going to be slower transit. They're going to be adding other things to it. If you're looking at chocolate, then okay, but maybe have some chocolate with some nuts in, or have one of those trail mixes. There's a company, Snack, and they do a gorgeous, they do a peanut butter and a dark salted chocolate, and it's chocolate and chocolate coated edamame beans and almonds and cranberries. You're getting that whole sort of thing, and they're in little packages, they're in bags, so you eat one. The longer it takes you to eat something, the more chance you'll have of your brain knowing you've eaten. So if you have a bar of chocolate, you get, oh, and it's gone, and your brain still hasn't registered. But if you're having something that's causing you to chew, and within that are things that slow down the sugar release, that will really help you. But the key thing is, get the things in at the beginning of the day, start balancing the blood sugars, and then the cravings will disappear.
I was going to add as well that I think it also helps to increase friction for those things that you might binge on. So by that we mean like put them in a higher cupboard or out of your eyesight, because if you have a clear container with your Snickers bars, Smarties, or whatever it is that floats your boat, you're going to see it and you're going to be constantly reminded of it. I find that at Christmas, if I've bought chocolates for Christmas too early, well, I often have to rebuy them several times because they're there. So I have to hide them or give them to someone else to look after, or I just try and buy them as late as possible. I'm not so bad right now at doing that, but it happens. And then have your fridge filled with things that are easy to grab. If there's some snacks that you like that can be kept in the freezer, that can be a good idea, because you might have to wait for them to defrost a little bit. So it's creating sometimes a little bit of a pause as well between that. It's not that we saying you can't eat something, of course you can, but if you just create a little bit of a pause, even 60, 90 seconds, it can sometimes reduce the intensity of that. So you could try even a glass of water, cuddling someone, singing, dancing, grounding, feel your feet on the ground, do a slow breath, not to dismiss it completely, but just to give yourself a little pause before you decide. Have something that you like as well that's slightly more nutritious. You could have hummus, you could have oat cake, you've got the crunch, you've got your pumpkin seed. I mean, there's lots of, that's not the only things, but I think it's setting yourself up so you can easily reach things that are going to satisfy that desire, but maybe not lead you to not just eat just one, like the Pringles ad says. If you have Pringles on your counter, you're going to eat a whole pack.
If I share my partner's favourite, he's a bit of a chocolate fiend in the evening, but I found some chocolate coated frozen bananas.
Yeah, is it Puck-Kip that do them, isn't it?
And you've got in the supermarkets, they've got the frozen strawberries and raspberries and blueberries dipped in chocolate. Excuse me. So you're still getting that, oh, I've got some chocolate, something sweet, but actually you're getting some fruit in there that's beneficial. And yes, it's that sometimes we're taking the lesser of two evils about things. So don't beat yourself up. It's these small steps that we can take. And it's just a matter of, is it a craving because you've just stopped work or you're bored? There's also those. Is it because you're coming into your menstrual cycle? Because then there's other support things that go in. As I say, it's not just about, it's what's creating that craving, what's missing in the body that's making those cravings happen. And that's what we work on more than the craving itself, because we can take the craving away, then you can eat a bit of whatever you fancy, because sometimes life does demand some chocolate and sometimes a banana will satisfy it. I'll put the two together. And then we get both things done.
Pop on over to our socials. We actually have a little reel for a banana chocolate peanut butter frozen dopamine snack. So,
fantastic. Yeah.
We've had a question in the chat from Lisa. Hi, Lisa. So she said, I know that eating late in the evening is bad for weight gain. Are there ways to train my brain over time to want to eat earlier?
Is she having her main meal quite late? Is it her dinner that she's having?
I don't know. That's all the information I've got. But Lisa, if you want to add anything to chat.
I do. I'll this Lisa will add something. There's also genetics that come into play here, because some people, quite often, some people are morning people and they wake up in the morning and they're full of life and they're great, but they really don't want to eat breakfast for the first couple of hours. They can actually feel a bit nauseous if they do. Now, they can eat their main meal a little later in the day. We don't want it at 9, 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes life, because of jobs, etc., it is that. But for a lot of people, eating late, if you think about food, it's energy, it's calories. And if we eat it in the morning and at lunchtime, we can burn them off. If we put them in at night time and then we sit down, watch telly and go to bed, then we can't burn them off. So it's a fact of what are you eating at the night time? Because you could have a big meal if it wasn't necessarily, well, we don't want a massive meal, but it's what you're eating. So if you're eating a meal and it was just a pasta and tomato-based sauce, that's going to be problematic, because that's just going to be a lot of carbohydrates that the body can't burn off and use. If we've got a meal that's actually a blend of things, like maybe Joe said, those merchant gourmet packets with some chicken and some vegetables, then that's less of a problem. So the tips are to stop the big meal at night is to try and put more food in during the day, so that then the hunger and the drive to eat isn't there at night. But if it is there because you can't do that for work reasons, so whatever, then that is really key then to look at what you are eating, because a lot of the time those cravings in the night are never going to be for protein. They're going to be, I always joke that no one ever craves broccoli except Jo, because she's weird.
Brilliant, thank you. Again, just to remind everyone, the session ends at 12:30. If you've got any questions, please do get them in now. Otherwise, I've got another question that I wanted to ask. Are there any low effort ways to nourish yourself during periods of burnout or high stress when you just don't have the capacity?
Yeah, I think sometimes we work with our clients when they're in a good place to actually prepare for when they're not. And it's, again, let's get away from this perfection. Frozen vegetables, prepared vegetables, having those meals that you can either get sent to you and delivered, or you can go out and buy, that you can have in the freezer. They're not, when you're in burnout, the last thing you want to be doing is adding pressure to people. I mean, I have some of the things that my clients have said to me, and they'll say that actually they'll eat hummus if they've got it in the fridge, but actually going to the supermarket to buy it can, in a burnout, the overwhelm of the noise, the lights, the smells, all of those things, it isn't going to happen. So it's okay. Let's find those. This is something that myself and Jo do. What's your favorite foods? Let's work that out for your sensory, because your sensory are going to be more pronounced when you're in burnout. And let's just find those things you can pull out of the freezer and pop in the microwave, but aren't being detrimental. And it is a case of packaged stuff. They're not perfect. No, but we don't live in a perfect world on there. And when you're in burnout, you need nourishing, you need taking care of, you need wrapping up in some cotton wool. And the last thing we need is more blame, shame, pressure, etc., because you're having a ready-made meal. There are good ones out there. I think you were looking at some this week, weren't you, Jo?
Yeah, I mean, Field Doctor has some nice ones, and where else did I find? There's quite a lot of things out there. I haven't tried them all. I've just ordered some, so I'll let you know how I get on with those. But you've got Mindful Chef, you've got something called Thrive, which is FRIVE, but I think they were super high protein. They were really massive protein, if I think. But I mean, Charlie Bigham's as well, they do individual portions that you can have in your fridge. You can freeze them. They're actually quite tasty, and I think everybody needs to have at least a drawer in their freezer of stuff. Either if you've made it, if you've felt like it when you're not burnt out and you've batch cook. I mean, cooking double if you can manage it, and then you freeze a batch. But if not, buy ready-made meals. They're there for when you come home late and you're tired, your fridge is empty, or you just cannot be bothered, you don't feel like it. I mean, I will eat them. It's not a problem at all. And you can, if you feel like it, you can add some extra frozen veggies. And there's lots of store cupboard things like the Merchant Gourmet pouches. I mean, I swear by those because they're pretty lovely ingredients and they don't need refrigerating. So even if you came home one day and just had a pouch from the pack, if you wanted to, or lightly warmed, that's nourishment. That's going to be enough.
At the
So
end of the day, beans on toast is a meal at times.
yeah.
Yeah, it's more about the burnout than the food. Then yes, we need to nourish you, but maybe in the burnout we have to rely a little bit more on the external support that's coming in. That's when maybe sometimes we want to use some of the supplements. Why are we in the burnout? Because that is the body saying no. That is basically your body saying stop. I can't carry on like this, and that's what Joe and myself work with a lot. We want to stop you getting to that point in the first place. But when you do, when you're in a good place, as Joe said, get that drawer, get it full of things. And when you're in a bad place, which for some people is the 4th week of every month coming into the menstrual bleed, you haven't got to worry about it.
And that's also when protein powders can be useful, can't they? I mean, you had the pack, didn't you? The packed protein, the smoothie things. They're sort of ready just for you to blend, I think, aren't they?
Yeah,
and you just add protein powder to that.
And some nut butter, and you've got a meal in a glass that you haven't got. And that's what I'm saying. Don't think your evening meal has to be a hot cooked meal. It's food that we're trying to get in. If you think of other countries, some of them eat for breakfast what they have for lunch. It's sort of, we get into these, you've got to have this cereal, this sort of fry up. But no, you have what you want. It's food.
And leftovers for breakfast is absolutely fine.
Fine.
Good, because that's my favourite. Lisa, Joe, we've got literally 2 minutes left. Hardly any time at all, but is there anything super quickly that you feel we've not covered in the session that you would like our community to know?
I just you were going to ask your audience a question, so I was thinking one more last question.
Yeah, I just think what we want to do is just to take away all that blame, shame, willpower. I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing this. And remember, you are an individual. There is no protocol. There is no diet that suits everyone. And it's finding out what works for you. And that can take time sometimes, yeah. But it's, that's what me and sort of Joe do. We get people, we go, okay, we're going to talk to you. We're going to find out what it's like to be in your body. We're going to find out where you need that support. And that's what we offer. So don't beat yourself up. There's enough in the world to do that. It's give yourself a little bit more compassion and a little bit more self-love. Eat what you want and add what you need.
Yeah, I was going to say gentleness and compassion, because we're all our own worst enemies. We beat ourselves up for every decision we make. So we've got to stop that and it's good enough.
Well, I think enough is a great place to end on. Thank you both so much. For everyone who's joined us, thank you as well. The recording will go onto our website after today. So if you haven't been jotting anything down, don't worry, the information will still be there. I found that very informative. I know it's going to change some of my eating habits over the next few weeks. So thank you so much to both of you for being here. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back with our next Unmasked session. I think it's on the 25th of February. We've got Holly Matthews joining us with our brand ambassador Nicole. So if people want to join us for that would be wonderful. But I hope people found it helpful and useful. Yep, just getting feedback now, useful tips. Thank you, Cal. You're very welcome. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.